Blood splattered on the walls. Aliens cowered in fear, begging for mercy as the human soldiers stormed their city. Captain Xander Rook led the way, guns blazing. The human recon team had landed on Zephyrus to investigate a distress call. But the busy alien streets emptied in terror the moment the humans arrived. Strange, Xander thought. Why so afraid of us? An armed Krell warrior named Thaxon blocked their path, aiming a plasma rifle. "Surrender, humans, your kind brings only death." Xander stepped forward and stared him down. "I challenge you to solo combat. Your best warrior against me, we'll see who's weak." The Krell snarled but agreed. He had no choice. To refuse would be cowardice. Xander checked his sidearm. 15 rounds, better make them count. Because if he lost this duel, the terrified aliens would swarm and slaughter his exposed human squad. This fight was now for their survival. Word of the duel spread through the city like wildfire. Crowds gathered in the streets, all heading towards the central arena to witness the spectacle. Thousands of alien eyes watched with anticipation as Xander and Thaxon entered from opposite sides of the battlefield. The human captain carried no firearm, instead wielding a high-tech energy sword. The blade hummed and crackled with barely contained power. It was a sleek, elegant weapon, the pinnacle of human engineering. In contrast, the Krell commander hefted a massive double-bladed battle axe, its cruel edges still stained with the blood of past victims. The axe looked heavy enough to cleave a man in two, but Thaxon spun it deftly with one hand, his muscles bulging. "Scared, little human?" Thaxon growled as they squared off. "You should be. I've slaughtered hundreds with this axe." "Hundreds? Wow, you must be really old then," Xander quipped back with a smirk. "Let's see if you can keep up, fossil." Thaxon roared and charged, bringing his axe down in a brutal overhead chop. But Xander was ready. He sidestepped nimbly, the axe whooshing past his head, and slashed his sword across Thaxon's ribs. The Krell's hide was tough, resisting the cut, but Xander drew first blood. And so the deadly dance began. Thaxon had the edge in raw strength, his axe swings shaking the ground with their power. But Xander was faster and more agile, ducking and rolling and leaping acrobatically as he evaded the Krell's furious attacks. The human's energy blade flashed and sparked each time it clashed against the battle axe. Xander targeted the wooden handle, hoping to burn through it, but the dense alien hardwood resisted his slashes. Thaxon unleashed a flurry of chops and cuts, putting Xander on the defensive. The human gave ground, panting, sweat stinging his eyes. He could smell the Krell's rank breath. A cry rose from the alien spectators as Thaxon's axe sliced open Xander's sleeve, nearly taking his arm off. The human stumbled back, switching his sword to his offhand as crimson blood ran down his dominant arm. Thaxon pressed his advantage and bulled forward, but he had fallen for Xander's ruse. As the Krell reared back for a two-handed strike, Xander lunged inside his reach. The human's energy blade flashed out in a blinding arc, and sheared clean through the handle of Thaxon's battle axe. The head of the massive weapon spun away and embedded itself in the sand. In the same instant, Xander leveled his humming blade at the Krell's throat. "Surrender," Xander demanded coolly, his chest heaving. "You've lost." Thaxon dropped to his knees, eyes wide in disbelief. All his life he had been taught that the Krell were the galaxy's apex warriors, but this human, this primitive ape, had outclassed him completely. "I yield," Thaxon growled. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. "I acknowledge humanity's strength." Xander nodded and stepped back, deactivating his energy blade. The alien crowd watched in stunned awe as he extended a hand to help Thaxon rise. Even in victory, the human showed mercy. The alien city gates creaked open with a resounding groan. Xander led his team through the streets, past huddled groups of wide-eyed aliens who gawked and whispered as the humans passed. Fear still hung thick in the air, but now it was tinged with a grudging respect. A hooded figure stepped out from the shadows of an alleyway. Xander's hand flew to his sword hilt, but the figure raised its hands in a placating gesture. "Peace, human. I mean you no harm. I am Axel Varro, leader of the resistance against the Zorgoth Empire." Xander sized up Varro. The alien rebel was tall and lean, with intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "The distress signal we picked up, that was you." Varro nodded grimly. "I apologize for the deception, but we had to be sure you were not agents of the Zorgoth. They have spies everywhere." Xander's brow furrowed. "What's your beef with these Zorgoth bastards, and what's this about a resistance?" "The Zorgoth are a scourge upon the galaxy," Varro spat bitterly. "They have enslaved and subjugated countless worlds, bent on forging their twisted vision of order through brutality and fear. We are but one of many rebel cells fighting to overthrow their tyrannical rule, but now the stakes are higher than ever." Varro trailed off, eyes haunted, then looked back at Xander. "The Zorgoth have developed a new weapon, Captain, one capable of shattering entire planets, of snuffing out billions of lives in an instant. They call it the World Breaker, and with it, they will grind the galaxy under their heel once and for all." A chill ran down Xander's spine. He had seen some serious shit in his time, but this was next level. Damn. "All right, Varro, you have our attention. How do we stop these psychos?" "By hitting them where it hurts," Varro said fiercely. "The World Breaker is fueled by a rare crystal called Zorium. The Zorgoth have been strip mining entire systems to find enough of it. If we could destroy their Zorium stockpiles, cripple their supply lines, we might just have a chance." Xander whistled, mind racing. Taking out strategic targets behind enemy lines to sabotage a superweapon? Now that was the kind of mission he could get behind. "I'm in," Xander decided. "But if we're going to pull this off, I need to report back to Earth Command first. Get some backup, heavy ordnance, the works. The Zorgoth won't know what hit 'em." Varro clasped Xander's hand, relief etched on his face. "Thank you, Captain. You have no idea what this means. With humanity on our side, we finally have a real shot at—" A thunderous explosion rocked the ground, sending aliens screaming and running in all directions. Xander ripped his hand free and snatched up his rifle as a hail of plasma bolts tore up the street. A Zorgoth strike team was pouring into the square, all bristling armor and nasty-looking weapons. "Ambush," Xander roared. "Circle up and take cover." The human soldiers snapped into action, diving behind rubble and returning fire. The rebels joined in, Varro barking orders as he blasted away with a scavenged plasma carbine. It was a brutal, chaotic melee, a close-quarters shootout at point-blank range. Then a massive Zorgoth in jet-black armor strode through the chaos, plasma bolts pinging off his shields like raindrops. General Cravox, Xander realized with a start. He'd recognize that ugly mug anywhere. Cravox was infamous for his cruelty, even among the Zorgoth. The general leveled his cannon at the nearest clump of rebels and humans and squeezed the trigger, vaporizing them in a wash of searing blue light. Xander snarled and sprinted straight at him, dodging and weaving as he closed the distance. "Hey, asshole," Xander shouted, "let's dance!" And then he was on Cravox, slamming the butt of his rifle into the general's faceplate with a sickening crack. The Zorgoth bellowed and lashed out, battering Xander's rifle aside and seizing him by the throat. Armored fingers squeezed, crushing the human's windpipe. But Xander hurled his legs upward, locking them around Cravox's thick arm and wrenching with all his strength. Bones snapped, and the Zorgoth howled, grip loosening. Xander ripped free and hammered a roundhouse kick into Cravox's knee, feeling it give way. The general toppled but rolled with it, coming up swinging. Xander danced back from the flashing fists, giving ground. His vision swam, starved of oxygen, but he pushed through it. No way was he letting this bastard walk away. Xander ducked a haymaker and lunged, ramming his shoulder into Cravox's chest in a football tackle. They hit the ground together and grappled furiously, rolling and thrashing. Pinned and desperate, Xander fumbled for his combat knife and plunged it into the gap beneath Cravox's chest plate. The Zorgoth stiffened and gurgled, black blood bubbling up between his lips. Xander wrenched the knife free and stabbed again and again until Cravox lay still. Around them the battle was turning. The Zorgoth wavered at the sight of their leader's fall. The humans and rebels surged forward with renewed intensity, driving the enemy back. In minutes, the surviving Zorgoth were fleeing, dragging their wounded with them. Xander staggered upright, breathing hard. He was battered and bloodied, but alive. Varro limped over, clutching a bleeding shoulder. "Cravox is dead," the rebel leader breathed in wonder. "I can't believe it. You killed the butcher himself." Xander wiped his knife clean and sheathed it. "Believe it. And he's just the first. We're taking this fight right to the Zorgoth's front door." He looked around at his surviving squadmates and new rebel allies. They were all exhausted, hurting, but there was a new fire in their eyes. "We head to Earth," Xander told them, "and then we show these Zorgoth bastards what humanity is really made of." Xander stormed into the United Earth Council chambers, his boots echoing on the polished marble floor. The murmur of voices fell silent as all eyes turned to the battle-hardened captain. He could feel the weight of their stares, a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Councillors," Xander began, his voice firm and resolute, "I come bearing grave news. The Zorgoth Empire poses an imminent threat to our very existence. They have developed a weapon capable of annihilating entire worlds, and they will not hesitate to use it against us." He strode to the center of the room, activating a holographic display. Images of the Worldbreaker flickered to life, eliciting gasps of horror from the assembled councillors. Xander zoomed in on the schematics, highlighting the devastating potential of the Zorium-powered superweapon. "This is what we're up against," Xander declared, his eyes blazing with intensity. "The Zorgoth will not rest until they have brought the entire galaxy to its knees. We must act now before it's too late." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices, councillors shouting over one another in a frenzy of debate. Some pounded their fists, demanding immediate military action, while others pleaded for caution and diplomacy. "Captain Rook," a silver-haired councillor interjected, his voice cutting through the din, "are you suggesting we plunge our species into an all-out war? Surely there must be a peaceful solution, a way to negotiate with the Zorgoth." Xander shook his head, frustration etched on his face. "With all due respect, councillor, you can't negotiate with a species that sees conquest as their birthright. The Zorgoth will never compromise, never back down. They'll keep coming until we're all either dead or enslaved." As the debate raged on, a sudden commotion erupted at the back of the chambers. Guards shouted and weapons were drawn as a disheveled figure pushed his way through the crowd. It was Axel Varro, the rebel leader, his face bruised and bloodied. "Captain Rook," Varro cried out, his voice hoarse with desperation, "you must listen to me. The Zorgoth, they've infiltrated your government. They have agents at the highest levels, working to undermine your efforts to resist them." Silence fell over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. Xander's eyes narrowed as he scanned the faces of the councillors, searching for any hint of guilt or deceit. He had always suspected that the Zorgoth's reach extended further than anyone realized, but to have it confirmed so dramatically was still a shock. "Varro," Xander said, his voice low and urgent, "are you certain of this?" The rebel leader nodded grimly. "I have proof, Captain. Intercepted transmissions, financial records, and more. The Zorgoth have been manipulating your council for years, steering you away from any action that might threaten their plans." Xander's mind raced as he processed the implications of Varro's revelation. The United Earth Council, the very body tasked with protecting humanity, had been compromised by the enemy. He couldn't trust anyone, not even his own superiors. In that moment, Xander made a decision. He would take matters into his own hands, assemble a team of loyal soldiers, and root out the Zorgoth infiltrators himself. It was a daunting task, one that would put him at odds with both the Council and the Zorgoth. But he had no choice. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. "Councillors," Xander announced, his voice ringing with authority, "in light of this new information, I have no choice but to act independently. I will gather evidence of the Zorgoth's treachery and expose their agents within our ranks. I ask only that you do not stand in my way." With that, Xander turned on his heel and strode out of the chambers, Varro falling into step beside him. They had work to do and time was running out. As word of Xander's mission spread through the ranks of Earth's military, a small but fiercely loyal group of soldiers, rallied to his cause. They were the best of the best, hand-picked by Xander for their skills, courage, and unwavering dedication to humanity's survival. There was Lieutenant Nara Singh, a brilliant hacker and infiltration specialist who could breach any security system. Sergeant Mikhail Novak, a grizzled veteran of countless battles, his aim with a sniper rifle unmatched. And Dr. Lena Sorensen, a xenobiologist whose knowledge of alien physiology and technology would be invaluable in unraveling the Zorgoth's secrets. Together they formed the core of Xander's team, a covert unit operating in the shadows to expose the Zorgoth conspiracy. They worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of intel, tracking down leads, and interrogating suspects. Each new discovery painted a chilling picture of just how deeply the Zorgoth had embedded themselves in Earth's power structures. But even as they made progress, the risk grew ever greater. Zorgoth assassins dogged their steps, determined to silence Xander and his team before they could reveal the truth. Firefights erupted in the streets of Earth's cities, and Xander found himself constantly looking over his shoulder, never knowing who he could trust. Through it all, the specter of the Worldbreaker loomed, a ticking clock counting down to galactic annihilation. Xander pushed his team harder, the urgency of their missions spurring them on through long nights and close calls. Finally, after weeks of tireless effort, the pieces began to fall into place. They had uncovered the identities of key Zorgoth infiltrators, high-ranking officials within Earth's government and military, who had been manipulating humanity's response to the alien threat. The evidence against them was damning, ranging from clandestine meetings with Zorgoth agents to direct sabotage of Earth's defenses. With the net closing in, Xander and his team prepared to present their findings to what remained of the United Earth Council, but even as they gathered their evidence and steeled themselves for the inevitable confrontation, a chilling realization settled over Xander. The Zorgoth's plan was even more insidious than he had imagined. The Worldbreaker, as terrifying as it was only the beginning. Through their agents and machinations, the Zorgoth had been subtly guiding humanity's development, shaping them into the perfect tool for their own ends. Earth's advanced technology, combined with the Zorgoth's brutal philosophy of conquest, would create an unstoppable force that would sweep across the galaxy like a plague. Humanity would become the instrument of its own destruction, a weapon wielded by the very enemy they sought to defeat. The weight of this revelation hung heavy on Xander as he prepared to confront the Council. He knew that the road ahead would be long and bloody, that Earth would need every ounce of its strength and resolve to stand against the coming darkness. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, Xander refused to despair. He had seen firsthand the courage and resilience of the human spirit, the unbreakable will that had carried his species through countless trials and tribulations. And so, as he stepped forward to address the Council, Xander's voice rang out like a clarion call, a rallying cry for all of humanity. "People of Earth," he began, his eyes blazing with determination, "the Zorgoth believe that they have already won, that our fate is sealed. But they underestimate the strength of the human spirit, the unbreakable bonds of unity and purpose that bind us together." He paused, letting his words sink in, watching as the faces of the councillors and the soldiers around him hardened with resolve. "We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We will stand together as one species, one people, and we will face this threat head-on. For the sake of our world, for the sake of the galaxy, we will fight, and we will prevail." A roar of approval swept through the chamber, a tidal wave of defiance and determination. Xander felt a fierce swell of pride as he locked eyes with his team, seeing in them the same unyielding spirit that had carried humanity through countless challenges before. They knew that the road ahead would be long and treacherous, that the Zorgoth would stop at nothing to crush their resistance. But they also knew that they had no choice but to fight, to stand against the darkness and protect the light of civilization from being extinguished forever. And so, as the United Earth Council mobilized its forces and the gears of war began to turn, Xander and his team prepared themselves for the battles to come. They would be the tip of the spear, the vanguard of humanity's resistance against the Zorgoth menace. For now, all they could do was gather their strength, hone their skills, and ready themselves for the trials ahead. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and they would not rest until the Zorgoth threat was vanquished once and for all. Admiral Xander Rook stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Invictus, as the massed human fleet dropped out of hyperspace above planet Zephyrus. Hundreds of warships, from sleek frigates to massive dreadnoughts, formed up around the Invictus in a dazzling display of humanity's military might. Xander felt a swell of pride as he surveyed the armada. They were united now, the full strength of Earth marshaled to face the Zorgoth threat. On the view screen, rebel ships moved to join the human fleet, their alien designs a stark contrast to the angular human vessels. Xander nodded in satisfaction. The alliance was holding strong. His executive officer, Commander Nara Singh, spoke up from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving a hail from the rebel flagship. It's Varro." "Put him through," Xander ordered. Axel Varro's face flickered to life on the main display, the rebel leader looking haggard but determined. "Admiral Rook," Varro said, inclining his head, "thank you for coming. Your presence here gives us hope." Xander crossed his arms. "We're not just here for show, Varro. Earth is committed to this fight. The Zorgoth have to be stopped." "Agreed," Varro said grimly. "My spies report that the enemy's planet-killer weapon is nearing completion in a heavily guarded space station on the far side of the Zephyrus system. We cannot allow them to unleash that monstrosity." Xander frowned thoughtfully. A frontal assault on a fortified Zorgoth station would be costly. They had to neutralize that weapon before it could be used, but throwing ships and lives at it recklessly would only weaken them for the larger battle ahead. An idea began to take shape in his mind. A dangerous plan, but audacious enough that it might just work. "A direct attack won't do it," Xander said slowly. "We need to take that weapon out from the inside. A small team infiltrating the station to sabotage it before it can be activated." Varro's eyes widened. "That's incredibly risky. The station will be crawling with their best troops and defenses." Xander nodded. "I know, that's why I'll lead the mission myself. I need a team of the best the rebels have to offer. People you trust absolutely." Varro blew out a breath. "I can think of a few who might fit that description. When do we leave?" "Immediately," Xander said. "Every minute that weapon is operational is a minute too long. Prep your people and dock with the Invictus. We'll drop you and a squad of my best special forces in a stealth shuttle and get you as close as we can." Varro nodded sharply. "Understood, Admiral, and thank you. I know the risk you're taking." Xander met his eyes. "We're in this together, Varro, humans and rebels alike. Let's go remind the Zorgoth of that." The rebel ship soon docked with the Invictus, and Xander made his way down to the main hangar deck to greet Varro and his team. A strange feeling of déjà vu washed over the Admiral as he saw the eclectic mix of aliens standing beside the rebel leader, remembering another time not so long ago when fear and suspicion had divided them. But things were different now. They were comrades, brothers and sisters in arms against a common foe. Varro stepped forward and clasped Xander's hand. Up close, the rebel leader looked even more battered, his clothing singed and torn, but there was a fire in his eyes. "My people are ready, Admiral Rook. We will not fail you." Xander squeezed his hand and nodded to his own team of human commandos, kitted out in dark, unmarked combat armor. "Nor will we fail you. Let's get this done." They filed into the waiting stealth shuttle, a sleek matte-black vessel designed for infiltration missions. Xander took the controls himself, guiding the shuttle out of the Invictus's hangar and into the void. Behind them, the massed fleets began to move, the ponderous capital ships taking up positions to screen the smaller rebel vessels, frigates and fighter wings, setting up pickets and patrols. They all knew that the attack on the Zorgoth station was only the opening move. The enemy's main fleet could arrive at any moment, and they had to be ready. As the stealth shuttle rocketed towards its target, Xander felt the weight of command settle heavily on his shoulders. So many lives were depending on the success of this mission. If they failed, If that weapon was unleashed, he pushed the dark thoughts aside. Failure was not an option. He glanced back at his strike team, humans and rebels united by grim determination. They were the best of the best, each one a battle-hardened veteran. They would get the job done, no matter the cost. The shuttle shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, the twisted black spires of the Zorgoth station looming in the viewports. It was a monstrous construct, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays, its surface pockmarked by jagged craters and scars. A fitting lair for an empire that gloried in violence and conquest. "Beginning approach," Xander said tightly, hands flying over the controls. "Stealth systems engaged. With luck, their sensors won't pick us up until we're right on top of them." The shuttle angled towards the station's underbelly, seeking one of the maintenance airlocks the rebel spies had identified. Tense minutes ticked by as they drifted closer, the hull creaking softly as the stress of the maneuver took its toll. Xander allowed himself a tight smile as the airlock loomed before them, its doors sealed and still. "We're in," he whispered into the taut silence. "Docking now." With a soft clang, the shuttle latched onto the airlock, magnetic clamps locking it into place. Xander and Varro were the first ones out, weapons raised as they scanned the dimly lit maintenance corridor beyond. One by one, the rest of the strike team emerged, moving with the silent efficiency of those long accustomed to covert operations. Xander chinned his comm. "Alpha Team will secure the hangar deck and guard our exit," he murmured. "The rest of you are with me. We're heading straight for the station's main reactor. That's where the intel says this weapon will be drawing its power from. We set the charges there, and this whole place will go up like a supernova." The team nodded and split up, Alpha moving off down one corridor, while Xander led the remainder in the opposite direction. He had memorized the station's layout on the flight in, and he guided them through the twisting maze of passageways with grim certainty. All too soon the alarms began to blare. "Guess they know we're here," Varro said dryly, his rifle snapping up as a squad of Zorgoth soldiers rounded the corner ahead. Xander didn't bother to reply, his own weapon already barking, as he dropped two of the enemy with precise headshots. The rest of the team opened up a heartbeat later, plasma bolts and kinetic rounds crisscrossing the corridor in a deadly web. The Zorgoth returned fire, their heavier weapons chewing into the bulkheads and sending molten shrapnel flying. One of the rebels screamed as he went down, clutching at a ruined leg. Xander gritted his teeth and pushed forward, laying down a blistering suppressive fire as he advanced. They had to keep moving, had to reach the reactor before it was too late. And then they were through, leaving the broken bodies of the Zorgoth behind as they raced onwards. Xander could feel the seconds ticking away like a countdown in his head. How long until the planet killer was activated? How long until all their efforts were rendered meaningless? They burst into the cavernous reactor chamber, a vast spherical space dominated by a pulsing core of eldritch energies. Catwalks and gantries crisscrossed the air above, and everywhere conduits and cables thrummed with barely contained power. And there, standing on a raised dais in the center of it all, "Emperor Zaxxor," Xander snarled, recognizing the towering figure from rebel intelligence briefings. The supreme leader of the Zorgoth was clad in ornate power armor, his cruel features twisted into a mocking smile as he beheld the strike team. "Well, well," Zaxxor drawled. "What an unexpected pleasure. The great Admiral Xander Rook, hero of the human resistance, come to face me at last." Xander raised his rifle, the rest of the team fanning out behind him. "Surrender, Zaxxor, it's over." The Emperor laughed, a cold and terrible sound. "Oh no, Admiral. I'm afraid it's only just beginning." He gestured to the reactor core, eyes gleaming with malice. "Behold, the true face of my Empire's ultimate triumph. This is no mere weapon, fool. It is the key to our ascendancy." With mounting horror, Xander suddenly understood. The reactor wasn't just powering the planet killer. It was the planet killer, a machine designed to rip the life from worlds and transfer that stolen energy directly to the Zorgoth's waiting fleets and factories. With such a power source at their disposal, their conquest of the galaxy would be unstoppable. "You're insane," Xander gasped. You can't control that kind of energy. It will consume you just like it consumed all the worlds you ravaged to build it. You underestimate the depths of Zorgoth science, Zaxor sneered. We will feast upon the energy of 1,000 suns, and all will kneel before our might. The age of the Zorgoth Empire shall be eternal. His clawed hand descended towards a pulsing control panel. Xander and his team opened fire as one, plasma and projectiles sleeting towards the Emperor in a desperate fusillade. But Zaxor's shield shimmered and held, the Emperor laughing madly as he advanced through the storm of gunfire. And then the world dissolved into chaos, as Zorgoth troops boiled into the chamber, slinging fire with reckless abandon. Consoles exploded, and catwalks crumpled, sending bodies and debris tumbling into the abyss below. Xander dove for cover, dragging a wounded rebel with him. All around his team was fighting and dying, locked in a brutal close-quarters melee with the Emperor's fanatical guards. Through the smoke and the screams, he saw Varro dueling with Zaxor, the rebel leader a blur of desperate motion as he dodged and parried the Emperor's crushing blows. Zaxor was bellowing with rage, his armor dented and scorched, but still he came on, an implacable juggernaut. Xander raised his rifle, trying to draw a bead on the Emperor, but a plasma bolt took him in the shoulder and he went down, vision greying out at the edges. The last thing he saw before the darkness claimed him was Varro, broken and bleeding, hurled against the reactor core by a contemptuous backhand from Zaxor. Then the rebel leader was rising, something clutched in his hand, his eyes meeting Xander's for a single endless moment. Varro smiled, and then he rammed the priming charge into the heart of the reactor, and the world vanished in a storm of light and fury. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support me, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And for every comment that says, "I liked the story," I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.